10 years ago, a group of friends slipped into the lake for a midnight swim. They laughed, splashed, promised they'd be back by sunrise. But they never came home. Their phones went silent. Their boat was gone. Families searched every cove, every inlet, every dark corner of the water. No answers ever came. Now, under the cold glare of floodlights, divers heaved something heavy from the depths. A hull broke the surface, weeds clinging like chains. A whisper cut the night air. There's something inside. The crowd froze. Everyone knew the story. Everyone had heard the rumors, an accident, a cover-up, a haunting. But no one expected this. Was this the boat that vanished with 8 young lives? Or was it another secret the lake had been hiding? What the divers pulled up that night would not only reopen the case, but also prove that the friends hadn't just drowned. They'd been silenced. And the reason why was buried deeper than anyone imagined, because the lake wasn't just water. It was a graveyard, and every grave held a story. It was supposed to be a night to remember. 8 friends, all in their early 20s, gathered at the small marina with nothing more on their minds than fun, freedom, and the thrill of being young. They carried coolers filled with snacks, a speaker for music, and a single dry bag stuffed with phones and wallets. Someone joked, "We'll be back by sunrise," and they all laughed. It sounded like a promise. The lake was calm, a black mirror reflecting the stars above. The boat rocked gently as they climbed aboard, their voices carrying across the water. They weren't tourists. They'd grown up swimming in lakes, boating in summers. To them, this felt safe, ordinary, but every detail of that night would later matter. The rental dock owner remembered how one of the girls insisted on a better boat, something bigger. Nicer, a little more special. The group posed for photos on the deck, their arms thrown around each other, grins wide. No one could imagine those smiles would be the last their families ever saw Dot by midnight. The lake was empty, except for them. Other boats had long since returned. Their voices faded as they steered toward a hidden cove on the far side, a spot that didn't appear on any rental map. Why that cove? Why not stay near the main channel, where boats and patrols were common? No one knew who suggested it. Some later claimed it was for privacy, just kids wanting to swim without being bothered. Others believed it was something else, a quiet corner chosen for reasons that still remain unclear. The last photo, recovered years later, showed the group lined up on the stern. One held the camera high, capturing everyone with the dark water stretching out behind them. Their smiles looked effortless, their eyes bright. Yet even in that frozen frame, some claim you can sense it, the shadows pressing in. The faint unease just out of view. What happened after that photo was never posted. Did they laugh as they jumped in together? Did someone notice the other boat then? The one lurking just out of sight? Because within an hour of that midnight swim, every trace of them vanished. No calls, no cries for help, not a single signal. The families would later replay those hours endlessly in their minds. What went wrong? Who decided to take them into that cove? Why did none of them ever come back? The open water kept its silence. But the truth, like the boat that would one day rise from the depths, was waiting. And when it surfaced, it would show that the promise they made will be back by sunrise was never theirs to keep. For most people, 10 years is a lifetime. For Alex Camden, it was 10 years of mornings that never changed. Every day began at 4:30 a.m. He would sit at the kitchen table with a chipped mug of black coffee and his laptop open to the same. Tabs, salvage reports, missing persons databases, insurance claim logs. By 5 o'clock, he had maps spread out across the table, their edges curling, pins in red ink marking the places already searched. The lake had taken his brother, Tyler. At least that's what the official story said. An accident, the sheriff told them back then. Probably drowned, but Alex never believed it. Not once. Why? Because accidents leave traces. People drown, yes, but bodies surface. Boats capsize, but wreckage floats. Anything should have been found. Instead, there was nothing. Not a life jacket. Not a cooler. Not even a bag with their phones. It was as if the lake had swallowed them whole. The town had moved on. People whispered less each year. New tourists came, new stories replaced the old. But Alex refused to let go. His mother called it obsession. He called it duty. He kept a notebook of every rumor. A fisherman who claimed to see lights in the cove that night. A hiker who swore they heard shouting on the north shore. Most of the leads went nowhere. Some turned out to be lies, others mistakes. Still, Alex logged them all. At first. He'd gone out in his own small boat, searching coves and inlets himself. He dragged nets, dove until his lungs burned, even borrowed sonar equipment. Nothing. But he never stopped. Some mornings he'd stare. At the last photo, the one recovered from an old social media account. 8 young faces, smiling, leaning into the frame. Tyler in the center, his arm around Sophia. A frozen moment before everything went wrong. Alex would whisper to that photo like a prayer. I'll find you. I'll bring you home. 10 years of mornings had worn him down. His hair thinner, his eyes darker, his hands rough from years of work and searching. But his routine never broke. Because deep down, Alex knew something others didn't. He knew they hadn't just drowned. A week before the trip, Tyler had called him. Just a short call, almost casual. But Alex remembered the edge in his brother's voice. Tyler had said something odd. If anything happens, you'll know where to look. At the time, Alex laughed it off. Now, he clung to those words like a clue. Why had Tyler said that? What did he know? Alex never told his mother about that call. It would have broken her. But it was the reason he couldn't accept the accident theory. Tyler hadn't sounded reckless or careless. He sounded worried. Prepared, even so Alex's morning stretched into years. His coffee cooled as he refreshed the same lists, cross-referencing names, boats, and claims. Friends urged him to move on. His job suffered. Relationships fell apart. Still, he stayed at that table, eyes on the screen, waiting for a break. And then, one morning, it came. A number he didn't recognize buzzed across his phone screen. The voice on the other end was nervous, hurried. You're the one asking about missing boats, right? Alex's grip tightened on the phone. His chest went tight, hope and dread twisting like wires. Yes, he said slowly. Who is this? My name's Aaron. I do drone work. Aerial surveys. I think I found something you need to see. Alex was out the door before the call ended, his heart pounding. 10 years of mornings had led to this moment. And for the first time in a decade, he felt the routine breaking, because maybe the lake had kept its secret long enough. The summer the lake dropped was the summer everything changed. A drought hit harder than anyone expected. The shoreline pulled back, exposing rocks and muddy shelves that hadn't seen daylight in decades. Old tree stumps rose from the water like bones. Fishermen muttered about tangled lines and broken props. But for search teams, the falling water meant opportunity. The local divers club, usually called out for rescues or training exercises, got permission to explore areas normally off limits. The marshes. The North Shelf. Places where the water ran too deep, too dark. That's when Alex's phone rang again. Same nervous voice from before. Remember me? Aaron, the drone guy. You'll want to hear this. The droughts pulled the marsh down. Some of the guys are diving there tomorrow. He hesitated, lowering his voice. They think they found something. Something big. Alex's pulse hammered. 10 years of waiting had taught him not to jump at shadows. He'd chased rumors before shiny objects that led nowhere. But this one felt different. The marsh was restricted for a reason. Locals said the mud there could swallow whole boats. If something had gone under, it might have stayed hidden all these years. By noon the next day, Alex was at the dock, pacing as the divers prepared. He watched them strap on tanks, adjust masks, and vanish into the dark water with a hiss of bubbles. The minutes dragged. 1 hour. 2, then finally a splash broke the silence. A diver surfaced, pulling off his mask, gasping for breath. His voice carried across the still water. We found it. The words hit Alex like a punch. He scrambled closer as the others swam toward shore, dragging something with them. A long rope trailed from the depths, attached to a heavy shape below. The winch whined as it strained. Mud and weeds broke loose in thick clumps. Slowly, the outline came into view. A hull. Faded paint. Blue trim turned gray with algae. Alex's chest tightened. His mind flashed back to that last day. His brother Tyler running a hand along the same trim, laughing, proud of the boat they'd rented. Could it really be the same one? But then the doubts crept in. What if it was just another wreck? Old boats littered these waters. Accidents happened all the time. The insurance companies wrote them off. The salvage crews hauled them away. Still, something felt different. The way the divers looked at each other, the hush that fell over the dock, the weight in their voices when they whispered, "It's them." The boat settled onto the shallows with a heavy thud. Algae clung to the sides like a second skin. Cracks in the fiberglass wept water. The air smelled of rust, mold, and something older. Alex stood, frozen, staring. Every instinct told him this was it. That his brother's boat had finally surfaced. Yet a darker thought gnawed at him. What if it wasn't just the lake that kept it hidden? What if someone had wanted it to stay buried? Because as the divers circled the hull, shining their lights inside, one of them shouted, "Hey, there's something in here." The crowd pressed closer. Alex's breath caught. Had the lake finally surrendered its secret? Or had someone planted a new one? The boat was barely on the trailer before investigators began their sweep. Floodlights lit the dock like a crime scene, shadows cutting across the water as every detail was photographed. Bagged and tagged out Alex stayed back, fists tight at his sides, watching. 10 years of waiting, and now the boat stood in front of him, dripping lake water onto the concrete. One of the divers climbed out, clutching something slick with mud. Found this wedged under the stern seat. He held up a faded dry bag. The crowd went still. Everyone knew what that meant. Inside were pieces of a life paused in time. A pink phone case, bright even under layers of silt. Another phone with a cracked screen. A thin silver bracelet with a heart-shaped charm. And a single key fob, the logo barely visible under grime. Alex's breath hitched. He knew that bracelet. Sophia had worn it since high school. He'd seen it flash on her wrist in dozens of photos. The deputies slid everything into evidence bags, snapping photos. Memory cards might have survived. The tech muttered, carefully setting the phones aside. If we're lucky. The words gnawed at Alex. For 10 years, luck had never been on their side. But maybe, just maybe, the lake had left something behind. He leaned closer as the text scrolled through the first phone. The screen flickered, then went black. Waterlogged, dead. The second phone buzzed faintly before shutting off. Still, hope remained. Memory cards, internal chips, they could be salvaged. Alex's eyes drifted back to the bracelet and the key fob. The bracelet was proof they hadn't just drowned and drifted. They had been here, inside this boat, fighting for survival. The key fob, though, that raised more questions than answers. Why was it in the dry bag? Whose car had been waiting for them? The detective bagged the items and glanced at Alex. We'll get the data recovered. Phones like these, sometimes they hold more than calls. Photos, videos, text fragments. You'll need to be patient. Patient. The word almost made Alex laugh. He had lived in patience for a decade, but tonight felt different. These weren't just relics. They were voices frozen in glass and plastic. If even one file had survived, it might tell him what happened in those final minutes. What had they seen? Who had they feared? And why had they aimed for that hidden cove in the first place? As the evidence team carried the bag away, Alex felt a knot in his chest. Answers were coming. He could almost feel it, but answers he knew had a price. And what was locked inside those phones might not just reopen the case. It might confirm his greatest fear, that his brother and his friends hadn't been lost to the lake. They had been silenced. The truth was out there, sealed in data and waiting to be pulled back to life. And once it was, there would be no turning back. The techs worked through the night. Wires snaked across the table, phones connected to blinking machines, screens filled with lines of corrupted code. Alex sat in the corner, palms pressed together. his eyes locked on the clear plastic bags that held his brother's last possessions. Got something, one of the specialists finally whispered. The room stilled. The pink phone buzzed faintly, its memory card coaxed back to life. Static flickered across the monitor, then stabilized into a grainy image. The first few files were harmless. Photos of smiling faces, arms wrapped around each other, the boat's deck in bright daylight. Alex's throat tightened. It was them, Tyler at the wheel, Sophia tossing her hair in the wind, the other splashing in the water behind Dot. Then the timestamps jumped. 3:47 p.m., the mood shifted. The next photo showed Tyler pointing off camera, his expression sharp, no trace of laughter. Behind him, a white cabin cruiser loomed in the distance, its dark windows reflecting the sun. Enhance that, the detective ordered. The image sharpened just enough to reveal two figures on deck, one at the wheel, another at the bow holding something to his face, binoculars, or a camera. A hush fell over the room. The technician clicked. To the next file, this one a video. 47 seconds long. Sophia's voice came first, shaky but clear. Tyler, who are those guys? The camera tilted, zooming in on the approaching boat. The man at the bow lowered whatever he held. For a second, his face almost came into view, shadowed by a cap. Then the screen jolted as if Sophia's hands trembled. Tyler's voice tense. I don't know. But they've been following us for an hour. Another voice Jake's cut in. Following us. Why? The video zoomed closer. The second boat was only yards away now. Two men, silent, watching. Rachel's whisper barely carried over the engine noise. Should we call someone? The feed fractured. Pixels broke into static. Then darkness. File corrupted. The tech muttered. Alex's heart pounded. He leaned forward, his fist white. Following us. His brother had known. They all had Dot. The detective rubbed his jaw. This wasn't an accident. They were being watched, tracked. The question hung heavy in the air. Who owned that second boat? Alex stared at the frozen final frame. The man at the bow still visible, faceless but real. A shadow out of the past, captured forever in 47 seconds. The room buzzed with quiet urgency, but Alex barely heard. In his mind, the open loops twisted tighter. Why follow them? Why? Wait until that hidden cove? And if this was proof of murder, then why had it taken 10 years for the lake to give it back? The truth was closer now, but so was the danger. Because if someone had been following his brother that day, someone still alive might not want this video to ever see the light of day. The 47-second video was proof of pursuit, but Alex knew it wasn't enough. A grainy clip couldn't tell the full story. He needed a trail. Something that left marks outside the water dot. So he went back to where he had always started: records, rental logs, fuel receipts, salvage forms, insurance claims. Paper didn't drown. It stayed. It waited. Dot he set up at his kitchen table, the same table that had carried 10 years of maps and notes. This time, though, the puzzle pieces began to fit. The rental records showed his brother's boat listed under a special request that night. An upgrade pushed through at the last minute. Sophia had wanted something nicer. But what stood out wasn't the upgrade. It was the clerk who approved it, Carl Brennan, marine insurance investigator. Brennan's name appeared again in salvage reports. A cabin cruiser, abandoned, filed the same month. A fishing boat, damaged beyond repair, signed off a year later. All tied to Cedar Lake, all with paperwork reviewed by him. Alex flipped to fuel receipts. Patterns emerged. Several lost boats had refueled at the same small dock, days before they disappeared. The handwriting on those slips looked too familiar. The same loops, the same initials. Then came the insurance claims. One after another, payouts for missing or stolen boats. The numbers added up to millions. And nearly all of them had one thing in common. Brennan investigated. Alex's chest tightened. It was a system. Rent the boat. Stage the loss. File the claim. Hide the evidence. Collect the payout. But what happened when people got in the way? His brother and 7 friends hadn't just vanished into the water. They had stumbled into a fraud ring that ran deeper than the lake itself. He pulled out the recovered photo again, the friends pointing at the cabin cruiser. Could that have been one of Brennan's boats? Was it already marked for disposal, part of a machine that swallowed vessels whole? Alex's hands shook as he wrote the question down in his notebook. Accident. No. Fraud ring. Yes. Murder to protect it? Almost certain, but almost wouldn't hold in court. He needed more than receipts. He needed to prove intent. That's when his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging. Or swim with him. Alex froze. The threat was blunt, but it confirmed something vital. Someone was watching. Someone knew he was close. The files on his table were more than dusty paperwork now. They were evidence. Dangerous evidence. The fraud ring wasn't just theory, it was alive, breathing, and still operating. The open question wasn't if it existed. It was this. How many lives had already been taken to keep it hidden? And how many more would vanish if he didn't bring it to light? The boat sat under a white canopy, dripping onto the concrete floor of the evidence bay. Floodlights hummed. Investigators in gloves moved slowly, scanning every inch. Alex stood behind the tape, his heart pounding as if each scrape of a brush might uncover his brother's voice. One diver crouched near the stern. Over here, he called. His light cut across a patch of algae and grime. At first, it looked like nothing, just scratches years of wear. But as the muck peeled back, letters took shape, crude, uneven, carved deep into the fiberglass. Help us. The room went still. No one spoke. Alex's throat burned. He pressed his palm against the glass barrier, staring at the words. His brother's hands, Tyler's hands, could have carved that message. Desperate, fighting for time. The letters were jagged, the kind you make when your hands are shaking. When every second matters. This wasn't an accident, Alex whispered. They knew. The detective's jaw tightened. Bag it. Full photo set, but hours later, when Alex returned for another look, the stern panel was sealed over. The photographs had vanished from the table. The log sheet marked pending review. Alex scanned the bay. Technicians avoided his eyes. The detective brushed past him, muttering about protocol. Where are the photos? Alex demanded. Evidence is being processed. Too smooth. Too fast. That night, Alex drove home with the words burned into his mind. Help U.S. His brother had tried to leave proof, and now the proof was slipping away. He pulled his notebook close, writing furiously. Message carved into hull. Confirmed. Then moved. Who? Why? The open loop twisted tighter. Someone was tampering. Someone didn't want that carving to reach a courtroom, and if evidence could vanish from an evidence bay, then the enemy wasn't just out on the water. They were already inside. Stop looking or swim. No name. No greeting. Just the kind of threat that makes a quiet room feel crowded. Alex didn't answer. He set the phone down, picked it up again, then finally typed a single line. Who is this? Silence. He called the station, asked for the night supervisor, reported the threat, asked them to log it. The voice on the other end sounded careful. Too careful? Every word came out slow and tidy, like someone reading a line they'd practiced. Noted. The voice said. The call ended. The uneasy feeling in single quotes. Another vibration. Not a person this time. An automated notice about his request to review the stern photographs. Delayed for verification. He hadn't even filed a formal request yet. Still, something out there already knew what you wanted to see. He tried the detective. No answer. Second text followed from a different number. Last warning. He turned on the kitchen tap and let the water run just to hear something human. Then he made a choice. If fear was the plan, letting it settle would only help the people who sent it. He drove. The road to the lake was empty, the pines black against a faded moon. He parked well back from the evidence bay. A truck rolled by with its lights dimmed, eased through the side gate without stopping, and disappeared inside like it belonged there. Alex watched the gate close. He didn't follow. He didn't need to. He had seen enough to know the problem wasn't only out on the water. He left and went somewhere bright. diner that never slept. The smell of coffee and fried batter cut through the night. From a corner booth, he could see both doors and the road. He opened his laptop, not for the comfort of screens, but to gather and copy everything he had, the rental records. The fuel slips, the claim forms, the still frame of the second boat. He prepared a package for people he trusted, family, an old reporter, a teacher who had once helped Tyler, and set it to send if he went silent. 2 men came in wearing work jackets, boots crusted with mud. Maybe they were just hungry? Maybe they weren't? One glanced toward Alex and looked away too fast. Paranoia has a taste. He swallowed it and kept breathing. His mind returned to the carving in the hull, use, and the way those photographs had slipped out of reach the same day they were taken. He replayed the call with the careful voice. He replayed the truck gliding through a gate that shouldn't open by itself. Another message. Arrived. You're making a mistake. Maybe he was. Maybe digging would cost him more than he could stand. But he kept thinking about his brother's last summer smile, about 8 young lives that didn't get a chance to grow old. And the doubt burned off like fog at sunrise. If the doors near him were closing. He would knock on different ones, state, federal, press anyone who still believed that truth should float. He paid for the untouched coffee and stepped outside just as the horizon thinned to gray. The lake sounded close even from here, a distant hush, like breath behind a wall. One thought followed him to the car and wouldn't let go. If someone can move evidence in the dark, what will they move next? And the harder question, the one he didn't want to say out loud, who, behind a badge or a smile, is holding the door open for them? Morning came thin and gray, the kind of light that makes everything look unfinished. Alex drove the long road that circled the lake and rehearsed the story he would tell, simple, clumsy on purpose, the way scared people talk when money is on the line, a stolen boat, a missing title, a worried owner who didn't want the insurance company. Digging too deep, he'd spent half the night shaping that lie, until it sounded like the truth people in this business expected to hear. The salvage yard sat behind a rusted, chain-link fence at the far end of an industrial strip. Tall grass pushed through cracked asphalt. Big shapes under black tarps hunched in neat rows. The sign out front leaned at an angle. Paint peeled by too many summers got Alex parked by the office. A glass box with a metal door and a bell that didn't ring when he pushed it. Inside, the air smelled like oil and old paper. A fan turned slow on the ceiling. Somewhere in the back, a radio whispered news to nobody. A man appeared from a side room with a practiced smile and eyes that didn't join in. You must be Alex, he said. I'm Carl. The voice matched the name that kept appearing in the paperwork, the one tied to upgrades, payouts, and boats that never made it home. Up close, he looked exactly how criminals try not to look. Clean shirt, steady hands, a face that read as helpful. Alex swallowed and let the fear show. My cousin's boat, he said, went missing last week. I heard you were the person to talk to when things get complicated. Carl's smile warmed by 1 degree. Complicated is what we do. He gestured to a chair. Alex stayed standing. I don't want trouble, Alex said. I just want the claim to go through. The company is already asking questions, and I'm not sure the paperwork is. He let the sentence trail off like a man out of his depth. Carl nodded slowly. A fisherman watching the float. Sometimes, in cases like this, we can offer guidance. If a boat is truly gone, we help the insurer understand why. How? Alex asked. By finding what needs to be found, Carl said. Or by making sure we don't waste time chasing ghosts. His phrasing was neat. His eyes stayed calm. But there was a little space between the words where the truth lived. Carl glanced toward the window and then back at Alex. Let's take a walk. They crossed the yard. Tarps flapped in a weak breeze. A gull called from somewhere above the power lines. Carl stopped at a covered hull and tugged the corner of the tarp. Beneath it lay a sleek shape, scrubbed clean, numbers on the side freshly stenciled. People assume boats sink and vanish, Carl said. In reality, they travel. Wind, current, thieves with trailers. The story matters more than the water. Insurers pay for stories they can believe. He let the tarp fall back. The words sounded like advice. They also sounded like a test. What do you need from me? Alex asked. Carl's smile didn't show teeth. For now, patience. Don't talk to too many people. Let me do my job. He turned and led Alex further into the yard. A side gate opened with a slow creak. Beyond it lay a second lot Alex hadn't seen from the road, larger, tidier, more private. Boats sat in straight lines, some stripped to their bones, others shining like they had just left the showroom. Order disguised as decay, a second man waited by a metal shed. Tall, gray at the temples, hands clasped behind his back. He looked like someone who spent his life telling other people where to stand. Friend of ours, Carl said lightly. Consults on? Processes. The man nodded once, eyes cool. You're looking for a clean resolution, he said to Alex. We prefer those. Alex felt the ground tilt a little. He pictured the whole message, help U.S., and forced his voice steady. I don't want problems, he said. Just tell me what to do. Simple, the tall man said. Stop asking questions in the wrong places. If the insurer calls, you say you're cooperating and refer them to us. If anyone else calls, you can see or hear anything unusual. And in return? Alex asked. In return, Carl said, you avoid delays. Delays. Another word that could mean care or cover. They walked back toward the office. A pickup rolled through the yard and stopped near the door. Two men jumped out in matching work jackets, the same mud-dark boots Alex had seen in the diner. One carried a small tool case. The other carried nothing and looked at Alex too long. Carl's tone stayed casual. Routine maintenance, he said. We keep things tidy. Inside, he handed Alex a card with a landline number and nothing else. If you think of details you forgot to mention, he said, call this. But remember, too many details confuse people. Let us handle the hard parts. Alex took the card and slid it into his pocket. The paper felt heavy. He didn't look at it. Before I go, he said, there's one more thing. 10 years ago, a boat went missing near the North Cove. People still talk about it. If something turned up hypothetically, would that complicate my claim? Carl's eyes flicked to the tall man and back. Only if you make it complicated. The tall man opened the door. The sun had climbed higher, throwing hard light across the yard. For a second, Alex caught his reflection in the glass-drawn face. Set jaw. A man out past the edge of sleep and luck. He stepped outside. The pickup idled. The two men watched the exit like it was their job. He didn't turn back Dot in the car. He sat with the engine off and let the quiet press in. He could feel the trap now, the shape of it. A story offered, a rescue promised. A door opened with a smile. He started the engine and pulled out slow, eyes in the mirror until the yard disappeared behind a turn. The air tasted like rain again. Somewhere beyond the warehouses, the lake breathed steady, old. Patient Dot, he spoke out loud just to hear it. Who else shows up when the story needs steering? Because today it had been Carl and the tall man and the workers with clean boots and dirty eyes. But tomorrow it might be someone with a title, someone with a badge, someone who could make the whole thing sound official. The tracker sat on Alex's workbench like a relic pulled from deep time small. Black, square, the kind of thing most people would mistake for nothing. But the serial number etched into its side told a different story. He had spent the afternoon running it. Through every database he could access salvage registries, insurance vendors, even boating safety forums. Finally, one line blinked back at him from a manufacturer's log. A unit sold to Lakeside Marine Recovery Services. 3 summers ago, Carl's company. The same name stamped on insurance claims and salvage forms. The same name families whispered when they talked about delays. Denials and disappearances. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. This was a receipt. Alex's hand shook as he pulled up the raw tracker logs he'd managed to copy before leaving the yard. Numbers scrolled across the screen time stamps, coordinates, movement bursts. At first they looked like static. Then patterns emerged. July 14th, 2017. The day his brother and 7 friends vanished. A cluster of points at the rental dock. A straight line north. A long pause in the shadow of the marsh. And then nothing. The tracker had gone dark at the exact moment their phones did. Alex leaned back, breath catching. It wasn't just a clue. It was a map. He cross-checked the other dates embedded in the log. More trips, more pauses, always in the same places. The hidden inlets, the deep cuts where no one anchored. Each pause lined up with a missing person report. Names he knew too well from long nights of research. Rachel Kim, Emma Clark, Chloe Martinez. And more stretching beyond his circle, the tracker had been riding along on those boats, recording their last movements, before someone collected both the evidence and the victims. But one line chilled him more than the rest. A fresh entry. 2 nights ago, coordinates in the North Marsh. Movement after midnight. The salvage yard wasn't a graveyard anymore. It was active. Someone was still shifting boats under cover of darkness. Still arranging the rows, still trying to keep secrets just out of reach. Alex closed his eyes. He could almost see it, the truck he'd watched slide through the gate without swiping. The men in work jackets, the engine rumbling low across the water. He picked up the tracker, felt its weight in his palm. The serial tied it to Carl. The logs tied it to the disappearances. But timing was the most dangerous clue of all. Whoever was moving those boats knew the net was tightening. They weren't burying the past anymore. They were rearranging it, hoping to keep the truth just one step ahead. Alex snapped photos of the serial. The logs every screen. He sent copies to his mother, to the few names outside town he still trusted. If he disappeared, the evidence would not. His phone buzzed with a new message. Not a threat this time. A warning from a state contact he'd begged for help days earlier. Feds interested. But move fast. If they shift again, case scatters. Alex stared at the words. Move fast. Seize it all in time. Or watch it slip away, boat by boat, like the lake swallowing secrets. He looked back at the tracker. Its light blinked once, steady and green, as if mocking him. The web had a break now. But the spider was still moving. The raid didn't begin with sirens. It began with paperwork, warrants signed in ink, still drying. Chain of custody forms stacked high on clipboards. A federal seal stamped across the top. For the first time in 10 years, the lake wasn't just rumor, it was case file. Evidence, crime scene. By dawn, the marsh buzzed with engines. Boats carried divers in black suits, sonar gear trailing like antennae. Trucks lined the access road, tarps folded, cameras mounted. The water that had swallowed so many secrets was about to be forced to speak. Alex stood on the dock with a vest marked observer. Hands stuffed in his pockets, heart pounding like it wanted out. He'd fought to be here, argued his way past every procedure and risk assessment. But this wasn't about rules. This was about watching the water give something back. The first hole came up slow, slings creaking under its weight. Muck poured off the sides, black and stinking. Beneath it, something pale caught the light. Not fiberglass. Not wood. A bone. The crane operator froze. Divers steadied the straps. Agents leaned in. The chain of custody officer clicked his pen, voice flat but urgent. Time. 7:42. Vessel tag 1. Remains present. Alex turned away, throat closing. He gripped the railing until his knuckles whitened. Behind him, cameras kept rolling, every step recorded, every movement logged. This time, no one would erase photographs or misplace files. By mid-morning, 3 more boats had surfaced. 2 empty, 1 not. Inside. Sealed in plastic meant to float, but weighted down with chain. They found belongings, phones, journals, wallets, items he'd memorized from photographs on grieving family mantles. Each bag opened another wound. Each label marked another life no longer missing, but confirmed. At the edge of the cordon, families stood in silence. Patricia Camden clutched a handkerchief, her lips moving soundless prayers. Linda Morrison stared without blinking, as if daring the water to show her son's face. Not all answers came from the lake. In the sheriff's office, doors slammed and voices rose. A deputy broke first, one of the men who had opened gates in the night, who had looked away when Carl's trucks came through. His statement was shaky but detailed. The payments, the deliveries, the names dot by afternoon. 2 more followed. Marina managers, men who had once poured Alex coffee, now spilling confessions under the weight of federal agents. Patterns took shape in the paperwork. Claims filed. Boats shifted, names erased. A fraud web stretched wider than anyone had guessed, held together by silence and fear. But silence was cracking. Alex sat on the dock at sunset. The air heavy with diesel and lakeweed, watching divers mark another grid. He wanted it to feel like victory. It didn't. The air smelled like rot. The water rippled as if mocking their efforts. Till he knew this much. The lake was talking now. Not loud, not fast, but steady. The arrests came fast once the water started talking. Carl first. Calm face, clean shirt, wrists in steel. Then the marina men who signed slips they shouldn't have signed. Then the deputy who opened gates at night and called it helping the process. Warrants moved through offices like a tide. Desks were cleared. Phones rang without answers. The motive was simple and ugly. Money. Insurance payouts on lost boats. Salvage fees. Kickbacks to keep mouths shut. A system built to look legitimate. Files in order. Forms correct. Signatures lined up. On paper, it was neat. In the water, it was murder. They called it fraud. They called it conspiracy. But for 8 young people and too many before them, the words felt small. Agents mapped the network on whiteboards that filled a whole room. Names, arrows, account numbers. It looked like a diagram of a machine. Because that's what it was. Not one man with a plan, but a machine with parts clerks. Managers, investigators, a friendly face at the dock who knew a guy. The lake had been the last step of the assembly. Line, quiet, efficient, final. Confessions cracked the calm. One man said he just moved boats. Another said he just stamped forms. A third said he never asked questions because he liked keeping his job. Each just added weight. The case built itself in layers. The tracker serial, the logs, the 47 seconds of video, the carving in the hull, the bags that floated when they shouldn't have. Chain of custody held. Nothing slipped this time. When the news broke, the town did what towns do. Some said they always suspected. Some said they never knew. Some said nothing and pulled their blinds. But the families didn't flinch. They had spent 10 years learning how to stand at the courthouse. Patricia Camden faced the cameras with hands that did not shake. "Bring them home," she had said for a decade. Now she said, "Thank you for bringing them home." Her voice carried the weight of every morning. Alex had watched her wait by the window. Sentences followed. Years added up. Life without parole for time for the men who helped him. Investigations spread to other lakes, other yards, other files lost on purpose. The machine would not run again. Not like this. The memorial came on a clear morning by the water. 8 names cut into stone. Flowers bright against gray. Shoes whispered on the dock. Divers stood in the back, hands folded, faces still. They had pulled more than boats from the mud. They had pulled a town forward. Alex spoke last. He did not talk long. He said the names. He said thank you. He said what he had learned. Caper leaves trails. People leave trails. Even water leaves a trail if you stay with it long enough. He looked at the families. He looked at the cove across the shimmer. He did not cry. He had done that in the dark when no one saw. After the service, they launched the fund. Small at first. A room over the bait shop. A borrowed printer. A name on the door. The Tyler Camden Lake Safety and Missing Persons Fund. The mission was plain. Free safety classes. Grants for sonar time when a family can't afford it. A hotline that is answered by a person, not a machine. A promise. We will not say accident until we know. Volunteers came. A fisherman who knew every shelf and stump. A teacher who could turn a map into a lesson. A retired dispatcher who never forgot how to listen. The first checks arrived in stamped envelopes with notes that said, "For the work, and for my sister, and for the ones who didn't make it." That night, the lake was quiet. It did not care about headlines or charges. It moved the way it always had, small waves touching stones and leaving them the same. Water forgets by nature. People remember by choice. Alex sat on the dock with the photo in his hands, the 8 friends on the stern, sun in their eyes, the whole day in front of them. He thought about what surfaced, the boat, the bones, the truth. He thought about what stayed below, the hours no camera caught, the last words only water heard, the years nobody would ever get back. Some things you bring up, some things you learn to carry. He stood when the first stars came out and felt something almost like peace. Not because the story had a perfect ending. It didn't. It never would. But because the machine had been broken and the next family might not have to learn their child's name from a tag on a bag, he looked at the dark line of the cove and spoke to the water. Like it could hear. We brought them home. Then he faced the lens and spoke to the people who would meet this story the way he first did in the quiet, searching for what is true. If careful stories matter to you, subscribe. Share the one safety habit you never skip on the water. It might be the thing that brings someone home.